Hi guys, Z here. We just got the update notification yesterday for the next version update to the game, and most of it is just recapped from the Fade channel. Of course, barring refines and manuals for the month, but also near the bottom of the update, they announced a brand new Summoner Duels Captain skill. And I know, Summoner Duels, yawn, snore, yawn, snore, yawn, snore, yawn, snore. But I got some stuff to say about it, so hear me out. Yawn, sorry. This brand new captain skill is called Toxic Remedy, and it grants bulwark and dosage to the captain at the start of turns 2 through 5. What is their problem with this unit? I was wondering why they didn't print a summer snake, and I guess I had that question answered just now, and by now I mean yesterday, because this video is a day after the notification. I had stuff to do. And presumably, it will be the next available captain skill this season since it's now being introduced. You know, sometimes I think about predictions I've made in the past and wonder how well those have aged. And Nergal and Sonya. This is assuming the two units that completely make them irrelevant are forced out of the meta, because once they are gone, there's a good chance that Nergal can make a comeback and Sonya could become meta for the first time ever. It's kind of funny looking back at this video because after I released it, IS went out of their way to counter or devalue a majority of the units listed in it. So for the employee or two or three or several that are watching this video right now, hi, I hope your day is going well. I want to say that I was both surprised and not that surprised by the new captain skill. Surprised because I figured they would make another Neathhogger with the effect instead of dropping a more accessible variant of it. And not surprised because they were already petty enough to release a bonus that directly targets Nergal twice in the span of a single month. How much do you think they regret dropping Nergal in the state that they did? I remember when the Fallen trailer came out and it was evident for anybody who plays the game that a unit that can negate and steal bonuses off a foe and their teammates is stupidly broken. Especially these days where units are even more bonus reliant now than they've ever been. Did nobody on the team think it would be this dominant? Genuinely, you could not go throughout the rest of Book 8 without seeing him in some capacity, whether it was Aetherraid's offense, Aetherraid's defense, or Summoner Duels. Essence Drain was just that good to bring around by itself, and not to mention he was no slouch in combat either, since his weapon had 3 special jumps, 25 true damage, and 15 flat damage reduction on top of inflicting a bunch of attack and res penalties. He could hit absurdly hard and tank really well, and even if he couldn't kill at times, the scariest aspect wasn't that he could, it was that he could hit you back. And especially when they released Null Counter Echo later that year, he was able to run that too because he didn't have a PRF skill. Even when Ice Fjorm released and dropped Shield Fighter into the game, he was still being used a lot despite his combat falling off. I was even planning on building Sonya because Essence Drain is that good, but I think I'll hold off for now. Maybe potentially forever if they quadruple down. All I gotta ask, IS, is what did this man do to you? Besides be among the best units of Book 8 in the entire game at one point, while also having incredibly evergreen support effect that could easily put him back at the top. The irony of it all being the name suggesting they're getting rid of a toxic unit a la Toxic Remedy. Personally, I don't think he's that broken in his current state, but I don't think most people will agree with me on that. I see Nergal in the same way that I see Mythic Loki and Summer Thor, and you could argue they're toxic as well, but I also don't see it that way. Those two are absurdly strong, of course, but I actually think having units that can remove bonuses is pretty healthy for the game. Even with these two, Loki does have workarounds, even if they're not the easiest, a la running minimal bonuses, more debuffs, or even Citrine, funnily enough, because she could pass those around after getting hit. Citrine! And Thor is only once, and sure, there's not as much you could do about that, especially since she could do it whenever she wants, but there are methods of playing defensively to render the use of it much more moot. Nergal to me is just another unit that is there to keep supports in check, although for what it's worth, Nergal also does take those bonuses and gives them to everybody on his team, which I think is a valid point in that case. Bonus removal is already really strong, but you're essentially double stacking against the opponent, which has shown obscene results at times. However, it does require the opponent being able to securely swing, which does matter at times since there are many situations where it can end up costing the unit entirely, especially with all the null counter armor, support, and general nuking power and threat range that so many units have right now. It's not the easiest to go up and swing or even approach at times. And the worst part about all of this This is all for a unit who isn't even that common anymore. At least going by Summoner Duel's S rank 1 statistics, Nergal did see a spike in the 2 months following the departure of the snakes, with a pretty significant amount of people using them in 33 uses during May and 34 in June. Last month was a lot lower with 10 total, but that could be since it was a very Loki and Thor dominant season this time, rendering the bonus less effective. It's evident that people are willing to use them again since Essence Drain is really strong, but not to the same extent as some of the newer releases. And for anyone wondering, he wasn't really used in Summoner Duels R since the snakes dropped in the game, but that's also because the mode is extremely cutthroat. It's not an issue specific to him, of course, but what he does for Summoner Duels R clearly is not enough for many people. For Aetherids, I don't have any statistics besides my own anecdotal evidence of never seeing him since the release of Snake, but I would imagine that's the case for most people. All in all, he's not someone that's on a lot of people's radars anymore, but it's clear that he's still being used to a decent degree in Summoner Duels, and I think they really hate that. It's funny because he's also one of the most evergreen units we've had from Book 8, and potentially ever, outside of Attune Micaiah, and even then you could argue he was more evergreen due to the potency of Essence Drain, and it's not like Micaiah has the same ceiling these days despite how good she was on debut, so I do get it, but that's still pretty crazy petty. And I thought the double Neathhoggers back-to-back at the end of last year was super spiteful as well. It still was. The specification of Dosage deliberately targeting him will never not be the funniest thing to me since it's so rare for them to do something like this. And yeah, Dosage does hit Tina too, but Tina never worked in Summoner Duels because of how turns worked in that mode. Both player phase and enemy phase happened at the same time, so she was never even able to steal bonuses to begin with. We had a firm Canto Curb that was designed for end turn stuff, but Leon was not the only one abusing that effect. Schism was designed around triangle attack, dual strikes, and Pathfinder. Salvage was designed around Canto control, which was designed around Canto, but let's ignore that one. Barricade, Divine Nectar, etc. I think the most similar thing to Essence Drain in this regard would be Ploy when Legendary Robin was at its peak, but that was also inheritable. They've done this to several units and skills in the past, but it's still pretty rare in general, so you know you made it as a unit when IS goes out of their way to counter you. I don't know how many of y'all remember this, but there was a period of time where IS kept releasing Brave Hector counters that failed to counter him, and he lasted way longer than he should have because of his refine and Hardy Fighter 3, and I feel like this might be another one of those situations. And it's so funny because it's for the same reasons that Brave Hector and a lot of other units were so strong until they completely kneecapped them. They don't test anything. Like, I'm 100% in belief that Brave Hector would not have lasted as long as he did if Hardy Fighter 3 never released, or Freyr currently if he didn't have an unlimited penalty cleansing at the start of the turn. So many of the most dominant units ever released are usually dominant because they toss it in the game before they realize, oh wait, we messed up, didn't we? This even goes as far back as year 1 of Fire Emblem Heroes with everybody's favorite magic man, Reinhardt.
Magic is magic.
And it's crazy because Nergal isn't exactly a super dominant unit right now like he was back in Book 8 where he was literally everywhere. Mythic Loki and Summer Thor, at least in a Summoner Duel setting, are the best and most preferred bonus cleansers in the game currently because they don't have to enter combat and they could just kind of hang out in the back most of the time. They don't really have to get that close. Even Loki is still pretty annoying at times in Aetherids if she's set up correctly. Although it's not like you couldn't use him right now, and you could make enough of an argument to still use him in a lot of places since bonuses are still continually going up in value. Even if he can't beat most units or tank as well as he used to, Essence Drain is only on contact, which is what made him so stupid to begin with, and I think with how many new bonuses they keep introducing, they don't want something like bonus stealing to exist. Negating them is one thing, but also stealing them is too much for them, and I honestly don't disagree with that sentiment either, despite how I feel about him as a unit, but I really have to wonder how effective this captain skill will be anyway. It only hits the captain and on turn 2 onward, which is still good, but some could argue it's too slow or it's not spreading to every ally, which is a potential drawback since it leaves other allies open to getting their stuff negated. Or I guess you could use Citrine in that case and spread around the buff. Citrine! It will mostly vary by the map as well, because some maps can let people go incredibly aggro turn 1, or they're designed in a way that's much slower to get going, which can really affect how much mileage you get out of Toxic Remedy, although a good amount of 6 range units can make it work most of the time. Not to mention that it being season locked means the worst case scenario is that people just don't run Nergal that season and then bring him back after, or in some cases if that season has competitive captain skills, they may just just bring him anyway. Also, dosage outside of the bonus security is just some stats and healing, which is fine, but against other captain skills, it'll probably have an uphill battle, especially since it doesn't work against Loki and Thor, who are even more common. Still, if the captain unit is within 2 spaces of whoever gets hit, then they still won't be able to steal the bonuses. It works if the captain is nearby, since Essence Drain is a splash effect for anybody within 2 spaces of the target, which is really nice in that regard. It's also why I think it will be a lot more effective in practice than it may seem. If they just released another Snake, then she would have just aged out eventually, or if she wasn't among the best armors in the game, then people probably would have just skipped her. And despite my wording, I do think it will keep him out of the mode when this captain skill is active. Unless the other captain skills are so competitive, I think Nergal will just be MIA during Toxic Remedy seasons. But honestly, who knows at this point? I think sooner or later he is going to leave for good, but I think right now it will just be season dependent at most. That said, it makes sense as to why they're doing this. They really just don't want one unit lasting this long, especially given the game's history. What he did and what he could still do has the potential to be too much, and I think it's fine to try and get rid of him. And with how Essence Drain works, it's no wonder why it has such a dedicated counter compared to almost any other bonus in this game. Even despite how I feel about him as a unit, I completely get it. Of course, I think if they really want him gone at this point, then they gotta try a bit harder. The captain's skill is still strong enough to deter him on those seasons, but that's about it. But hey, you know, it could be worse. You could still use him on any other season for now. Even if people do stop using him because of this, he had a long enough shelf life, and maybe when his refund comes around, he'll be at the top of the game again. Unless their spike goes so far that they decide to put him in the refine jail that they already got rid of. It was nice knowing you, Nergal. I'll see you after the next Summoner Duel season.